I'm Dr. Rutledge, and just completed two very exciting educational courses, one in Calcutta, the PACE course on bariatric surgery with Dr. Tantia at ILS hospitals. A big success there. It was a great experience and I think a great deal of learning. Also in Hyderabad with Dr. Lakshmi, Dr. Tapas, and a variety of experts. And recently there was a discussion about conversion of sleeve to MGB. And my own opinion is there's significant confusion about this issue, so I'm going to give you my own personal opinions. I have a lot of experience in revision of failed band and sleeve to MGB, and I hope this will be valuable in protecting you from making some mistakes. So let's begin by saying that the MGB is unique in comparison to the other weight loss surgeries in that it is able to be tailored to the patient. So if you think of using a dosage, a power, the attractive feature of MGB is it can be tailored based on the dosage or the power of the surgical therapy you want to use in that patient. And what I mean by that is very simple. If you take a dosage of pain medicine for a patient, there's a variation in how much pain medicine you give the patient, whether it's a milligram of morphine or 3 milligrams or more. In contrast, a sleeve is a sleeve, and a Roux-en-Y is a Roux-en-Y, and there's minimal surgeons in the world that I'm aware of who adjust these operations based on the patient, and the MGB is quite different. The MGB is eminently tailorable, and so we can adjust the length of the biliopancreatic limb and the pouch, and I'd like to talk about that briefly. Now, these technical issues, I recommend you leave to your first 200 or 300 cases of MGB are completed. In general, my recommendation for the new MGB surgeon is to avoid revisions, avoid complex patients, and just do the first 200 MGBs in the standard technique that I recommend, and that's a moderate-sized gastric pouch, so you're extending the esophagus. You don't need a, quote, tight pouch. You don't need the EG junction. You don't need to worry about the fundus. You don't need to worry about the crura. You don't need to worry about the presence or absence of hiatal hernia. MGB will revise and treat all of these. And so make a standard MGB. And in my case, we recommend for Indian vegetarian patients, maybe short of 200 centimeters, and for a well-nourished American patient, around 200 centimeters. And this would be like doing a standard sleeve or Roux-en-Y, but much more effective, much more durable, much more anatomic impact on the patient. So don't worry about tailoring the operation in the first 100 moderate-sized patients that you do with MGB, and even the first 200. Now, once you're an MGB expert, then you can begin to add the advanced technical details. So for example, let's suppose you do a thin diabetic, then we recommend you shorten the bypass. Let's suppose you do a particularly elderly patient, you might shorten the bypass. Suppose you do somebody who's super obese, we'd recommend considering lengthening the bypass. And so there are a variety of tailoring techniques that I have shown in my series affect the weight loss. And again, this is different than with the Roux-en-Y and the long limb Roux-en-Y patients. And we could go through the animal studies on this. But finally, let me get to the idea of failed band and failed sleeve. In my experience, a failed band or failed sleeve who have the standard MGB bypass that is around 200 centimeters will unfortunately have small amount of weight loss. And the reason behind that, I think, is understood by understanding how the body reacts to starvation. So in other words, we know if we put a patient on a 1,000-calorie diet, they'll have rapid weight loss, and by 7 to 10 days, their basal metabolic rate will go down, and they'll actually become more efficient at using calories, and so weight loss will slow and even stop. And when we see a failed band or a failed sleeve, I believe they've gone through that same pathologic process. They have had the total intake decreased, they have stabilized or increased, and they are not the same 300 pounds or 150 kilogram patient they would have been if they came to you without the failed band or failed sleeve. And so since we strongly urge you not to touch the gastric pouch and to stay away from the band and the capsule of the band, you're likely to end up with a slightly larger gastric pouch than you would have if you have a virgin or first-time MGB. So generally we recommend lengthening the bypass. Now we have heard some surgeons recommend that you actually look at the terminal ileum and leave 100 centimeters there. And again, let's do some calculations. How long is the gut? Well, some people say 27 feet, 30 feet would be 10 meters, maybe 6 meters in some measures. It varies. But if you do a 2-meter bypass, that's generally about a third of the gut. If you would only leave 1, that is getting close to 70 to 80% bypass. And we believe that's the equivalent of a BPD, and we know BPD can cause weight loss, but it's often deadly and dangerous. So in choosing the amount of additional bypass for a failed sleeve, we think other factors should be taken into account. First of all, you need to talk with the patient, because you can be more aggressive if the patient is able to tolerate excess weight loss and is willing to come back and have a revision if the amount of extra bypass is too much. In India, the surgeons and patients I've talked to are very intolerant of excess weight loss. They haven't experienced it, they don't understand how to deal with it, and so my bias is then to recommend conservatism. The other factors are age, associated illnesses, and things like that. So if you have a more delicate, fragile, or sickly patient, you should be, in my opinion, much less aggressive. And so we recommend that. When you're calculating that in general for a failed sleeve or bypass, an additional 100 and sometimes 200 centimeters is appropriate, but it depends on the patient's weight. So you calculate that you bypass less additional gut when you have a low weight patient and more if you have a high weight patient. And again, all these factors are necessary, and my bias is that if you are a young MGB surgeon, don't touch revisions until you have experience with over 100 or 200 MGBs. And then it's a complex process, and we recommend extreme caution, because converting a sleeve to MGB is very easy, but having the knowledge and the understanding to make the accurate decision takes a great deal more experience, and we certainly urge you to avoid doing that until you're much more experienced. I hope this answers some of your questions, and I'll talk to you again soon.